The crystal glasses clinked against the fine china as my sister Sarah hosted one of her usual fancy family dinners. Her home was spotless, the table perfectly set, and everything looked like it belonged in a magazine. She liked things that way, neat, proper, and expensive. It was just another night where she and her husband Marcus could show off their perfect lives. I sat quietly at the far end of the table, sipping wine and listening to Marcus go on and on about his latest business deal. He always talked like he was the smartest person in the room, as if being a CEO made him some kind of king. And that's how I closed the Anderson merger, he finished proudly, smiling as everyone at the table nodded and murmured in admiration. Biggest deal of the quarter. Some people just understand business at a different level. He glanced at me, and I knew what was coming. His smile looked polite, but I could see the arrogance behind it. Speaking of business, Marcus said, turning toward me, how's that little, what do you call it, consulting thing of yours? It's going well, I answered calmly. I saw Sarah shift in her seat, already waiting for her husband to put on a show. At 38, I'd learned that staying calm was the best way to deal with people like Marcus. Still working from home, right? He said with a smirk, swirling his drink. When Sarah said her sister was in business, I expected something more professional. I mean, how can anyone take you seriously without a real office? My mother looked uncomfortable, but she didn't say anything. My dad just kept eating, pretending not to notice. They'd picked their side in the family years ago, and it wasn't mine. My client seemed satisfied, I said, taking a bite of the salmon Marcus had catered from the most expensive restaurant in the city. Clients? Marcus laughed loudly. Is that what we're calling the local coffee shops and boutiques now? Claire, if you ever want real advice about running a business. Actually, a voice said from the other end of the table, her client list is quite impressive. Everyone turned toward Richard Anderson, the man Marcus had been bragging about earlier. He was sitting quietly near the head of the table, the guest of honor tonight. In fact, Richard continued, setting down his fork, my daughter's company has been trying to get on her waiting list for months. Claire's firm is very selective. The room went completely silent. I could hear Sarah's sharp breath, and I saw Marcus's confident expression start to change. Your daughter's company? Marcus asked, suddenly unsure of himself. Megan Anderson, CEO of Horizon Tech, Richard replied, smiling at me. Claire handled the Matthews Group acquisition last year. It was a brilliant move. Megan told me who was behind it, and I couldn't believe someone so young had led such a complex deal. But then, real talent doesn't need a big office to prove itself. The color drained from Marcus's face. The Matthews deal had been huge, worth over $400 million, and I had run it from my home office. The same home office he'd just mocked. I didn't know, Marcus stammered. Obviously, I said softly, allowing myself a small smile. More wine, anyone? Sarah's hand shook as she picked up her glass. Her calm, hostess face was starting to crack. My mother looked shocked, and my father was staring at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Claire, Marcus tried again. Why didn't you say you handled big corporate deals, that your consulting business worked with Fortune 500 companies? I gently set down my glass. You never asked, Marcus. You were always too busy talking about yourself. Richard chuckled. And speaking of success, Claire, I hope you'll consider taking Horizon Tech on as a client. Megan has really been hoping to work with you. Of course, Marcus cut in quickly. Anything for family. I'm sure Claire would be happy to help. I'm afraid my schedule is quite full, I said politely, but Mr. Anderson, please tell Megan to send over a proposal. I'll look it over. Marcus's face turned red. The merger he'd just bragged about, it was worth half of what I'd done, and now, Richard Anderson was looking at me with respect, barely noticing Marcus at all. Claire, Sarah finally spoke, her voice trembling, why didn't you ever tell us? Tell you what? I asked. That while you and Marcus laughed at my little business, I was building one of the most respected consulting firms in the country, that the home office you mocked has closed deals worth billions? I reached for my napkin and dabbed my lips. Would you have believed me, or would you have just found new ways to downplay what I do? We all knew the answer. They had spent years believing Marcus was the business genius, and I was just his lesser, struggling sister. But, your clothes, Sarah said weakly, looking at my simple black dress, your car, you live in that small house. Because I don't need to prove anything, I told her, real success doesn't need luxury cars or designer labels, it shows up in the work. Richard Anderson nodded. Exactly. That's why your reputation in the business world is so solid. Claire, no show, just results, the opposite of. He glanced at Marcus. Marcus gripped his glass tightly. His carefully built image was starting to fall apart. But I wasn't finished. Mr. Anderson, I said, turning toward him, I'd love to hear more about Horizon Tech's plans, maybe over dinner next week. I know a great little place. The new French place on 5th, Marcus jumped in. I'm a member there. I know, I said with a small smile. It's one of my side investments. It doesn't make millions, but it does well. The restaurant Marcus had bragged about, the one he worked so hard to join, it was mine. Sarah's wine glass slipped from her fingers and spilled across the tablecloth. For once, she didn't rush to clean it. She was too stunned, staring at me like she was really seeing me for the first time. The thing about success, I said as I stood up, is that it doesn't need attention. While you were focused on Marcus's promotions and your country club life, I was building something real. I picked up my simple leather bag, not a luxury brand, but handmade by an artist I once helped launch their business. Thank you for dinner, Sarah. Mr. Anderson, I'll have my team reach out. As I walked toward the door, Marcus called after me. Claire, wait, maybe we could talk. Talk about what? I asked, turning around. How you mocked my work for years, how you only care now because someone important respects it, or how you didn't notice until it embarrassed you. Nobody said a word. Sarah sat frozen. Her perfect dinner was ruined. My parents looked away. And Marcus looked like a man who just watched his crown slip off his head. Send me the bill, Sarah. And with that, I walked out, head high, heart steady, and no need to prove a thing. I didn't say much as I left that fancy dinner, just a small parting line over my shoulder. I know how much Marcus hates spending money on family charity cases. Then I walked out and let the door close behind me. That click was all I needed. They could enjoy their expensive catered meal while chewing on the fact that they'd spent years mocking the wrong person. They thought I was beneath them. But they were wrong, very wrong. Because that dinner, that was just the beginning. What Marcus didn't know yet, what he was about to find out, is that the big merger he'd been counting on to secure his position as CEO, it wasn't going to happen, not the way he planned. There was a complication. And that complication was me. The next morning, my phone was flooded with messages. Sarah texted me over and over. Marcus left voicemails. Even my parents sent long emails. Suddenly, everyone wanted to clear up the misunderstanding. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I smiled. I thought about the look on Marcus's face when Richard Anderson revealed who I really was. They didn't know that I'd been working on this for months, carefully, quietly, planning every move while they laughed at my cute little business and dismissed my home office as a joke. Claire, my assistant, buzzed through the intercom of that very office. Mr. Anderson is on line 1. I picked up the phone, the same phone I used to negotiate contracts and by companies they didn't even know I was connected to. Good morning, Richard, I said. His voice came through warm and amused. That was quite a dinner. Your brother-in-law seems to be having a rough morning. He's been calling since dawn. I could picture it, Marcus, pacing, angry, confused, desperate. Has he figured it out yet? I asked, opening my files on the triple screens in front of me. Not quite, Richard laughed, but he's probably starting to wonder who's been quietly buying up shares in his company. That was me. I had set up a group of shell companies, each one slowly buying pieces of Marcus's business over the last 6 months. He never looked closely enough to connect the dots. He never imagined I could be behind it. Claire's voice popped in again. Sarah's calling again. I declined. Richard chuckled. Your sister seems persistent. They all are now, I said, now that they know. I hit send on another share purchase, watched as my ownership climbed. Amazing how quickly people change when they realize you hold the power now. In the days that followed, Marcus's panic grew. He started making calls, digging into merger details, trying to find out who was buying his company. I could tell he was hoping to prove how sharp he was, but all he found was something terrifying. His company was being taken over, piece by piece. A few days later, he cornered me outside my favorite coffee shop. He looked shaken. You have to help me, he said. Claire, whatever's between us, this is my career. I took a calm sip of my coffee. Funny, I said, Last month you laughed at this place, called it a hobby cafe, when I mentioned I helped them expand. I was wrong, he said, his voice cracking a little. I was arrogant, stupid, but please, if this merger falls apart, then what, Marcus? You'll have to actually work for something? He looked like I had slapped him, but I wasn't done. Start from scratch? Build a company without leaning on your last name? We both knew he'd never done anything by himself. His position came from our family's name and the old boys club, not talent. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from my lawyer, another block of shares acquired. You now own 51%. I looked up. So, the board meeting is next Thursday at 2 o'clock, right? He nodded, stunned. Don't bother preparing anything, I said, I'll be leading the presentation. The week before the meeting was chaos. Sarah came to my house, begging me to reconsider. He's family, she said. So was I, once. Then my parents tried. Think of the family name, Dad said. But they hadn't cared about the family name when they laughed at Marcus's jokes about my little business. And now they wanted unity. Too late. At the board meeting, I walked into the room Marcus had ruled for years. I took the head seat at the table. The old board members looked confused. Gentlemen, I began, I represent Quantum Ventures, the firm that now owns controlling interest in this company. We've reviewed the merger, and we have serious concerns. I spent the next hour listing every mistake Marcus had made, every shortcut, every bad decision, every time he had chosen image over substance. They listened, and they started to see the truth. At this time, I said, we recommend new leadership, someone with real strategy, someone who built something from the ground up. Marcus stood up, red-faced. You can't do this. I built this company. I opened a folder. Actually, I said, your leadership has dropped this company's value. The only thing holding you up was this merger, which, as of this morning, is off the table. The room broke into chaos. Marcus shouted. Shareholders demanded answers. I just watched. As he tried to leave, I added one last thing. Oh, and you might want to check your country club membership. It's about to be revoked. In the aftermath, Marcus resigned. His career was over. Sarah's friends, the ones who once sneered at me, now whispered about me instead. My parents called for a family meeting. I went, out of curiosity. You've made your point, Mom said. Surely we can fix this, as a family. I looked around the table. Marcus, no longer in a fancy suit. Sarah, humiliated. My parents, confused and quiet. Fix what? I asked. I just did business. Isn't that what Marcus always wanted me to understand? But it's destroyed him, Sarah whispered. No, I said, his arrogance destroyed him. I just held up the mirror. I stood to leave. The company will thrive now, and Marcus? Maybe he'll find out what it's like to run a small business from home, if he can handle it. The irony hung in the air. 5 years later, the company had doubled in value. I merged it with Horizon Tech, creating one of the biggest consultancies in the country. Marcus tried starting his own company. It didn't last. Without a big title or family favors, he didn't know how to lead. Sarah still hosts small family dinners now and then. Sometimes I go. Sometimes Marcus looks at me, not with anger, but with quiet recognition. He finally understands. Real success doesn't shout. It just shows up. I still live in the same modest house. Still work from my little home office, the one they all mocked. But on the wall, I've framed a photo from that last board meeting, the look on Marcus's face when he realized I had outplayed him completely. It reminds me of one simple truth. Real power isn't loud. It's silent, steady, and always watching. And I knew exactly what I was building all along.